Before we hear from Zia and Yero, though, just a quick reminder that you can keep up with all the events and opportunities we're running here at Film Academy Southwest by heading to our website or following us on social media. We'll put the links to all of that in the chat in just a second. And do also remember that if you're aged between 16 to 19, applications are now open for BFI Film Academy courses right here in the Southwest. You can get experience writing, directing, producing on a proper film set. So that's a great opportunity. We'll put the details for that in the chat as well. But for tonight, the only thing left from me to say is that there will be time for some questions. So if anything does come to you as you're watching, YouTube will have a chat. Please feel free to put it in there, and then there'll be time to answer those at the end. That's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to Zia to get into the conversation. So enjoy.
Hello, sorry about that technical issue already. Yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you today, Yero, and I'm really excited for you guys to have joined us today. And I just want to ask and get started and ask you, Yero, when did your career begin and when did you realise that screenwriting was what you wanted to do?
My career began at 16. It was a weird one. It was a very strange one. I just finished homeschooling and I had applied for this really cool documentary where I would, if I was a successful applicant, be one of, I think, 9 teenagers from all over the UK. We had 9 months to create our own fashion label and show it at London Fashion Week. And I was obsessed with pop culture. I was obsessed with storytelling and merging brands with culture and making content, basically. And I got in as part of like the 1 of 9, and that filmed for 9 months. That was very strange because that was my first and only forte into like reality TV, but I didn't realize it's actually this is like, is it maybe, yeah, it's during like Made in Chelsea time or like just a bit before, but a lot of it is very, you know, structurally there's a story behind it. We had diary cams, we had cameras at home, etc. And then I got into university to study fashion communications after that. And I realized that I liked the storytelling aspect of what we were actually doing rather than the actual communication side, like the actual branded content through fashion side. And I thought, okay, there's a broadcast element of my course. Let me try and switch on to that. That was full. So it meant I did loads and loads of internships and got as much work experience as I could get in all elements of telly, not just scripted. But I knew that I wanted to write for, I didn't know if it was TV or film. I just thought the screen was the screen. But then I was like, no, I want to start putting pen to paper and like telling stories.
That's exciting. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like the multiple pathways into screenwriting. And I know a lot of people are always at that crossroads where they're like, do I get into the industry and do I get work experience or do I go to film school? And I think a lot of people ask that question. And yeah, I want to know, what's your opinion on that, film school or experience?
I am from quite like a non-traditional background of schooling because I was homeschooled for a while when I was younger, and I've gone through the alternative side of schooling, and I've still come out the other side fine with great grades. I've got a successful career ahead of me, but I would say it depends on how you feel about institutions. For me, I prefer learning on the job. I prefer having the space and time to make mistakes and learn as much as I can, soak everything up. I think it really depends. I think film school can be extremely expensive and a huge commitment. And I think if you want to make the investment to go to film school, please do. I don't think it's for me. It wasn't, I was desperate to go, I think, for about a year when I was about 20 to 21. And then places I was applying to, they were like, oh, do you have enough life experience? You know, all of that. And I was feeling quite resentful, like I've done so much in my life. And actually, I feel really grateful not to have gone and to do a short course. I saved up as much as I could for a couple of years and did a short course in New York, which was £400. So I literally put away like, I don't know, something ridiculous, like 30 quid here and there. And then did this 3-month course that was super eye-opening, because that was a film screenwriting course, and all of my references were TV. And I remember being like, feeling a bit strange, and my tutor just being like, maybe you're a TV writer. And I thought, can't I be both? And that was really fun, because I was still learning about like what my voice actually was and the kind of things I wanted to write. So 3 months compared to like 3 years sometimes, I'm not sure how I'd have felt after 3 years. So yes.
No, that's great. But like, that's an interesting point, you saying about your tutor said, oh, maybe you're a television screenwriter. Yeah. What makes a television screenwriter? Like, what's the difference between the two?
Great question. I don't think there's like a difference between the writer. I think there's a difference in the way in which you write and the way in which a story unfolds. For me, I love episodic storytelling because I'm greedy. I don't want something to finish in like 90 minutes. I want to spend time with these characters. I want to get to know them. I want to know their flaws. I want to know how they are with different people. And I think I watched this really quite short clip with Issa Rae. I think she was on The Breakfast Club doing some promo for the finale of Insecure. And there's something that she said, which I like abide by, that she hates when TV shows like overstay their welcome. So in her mind, when she first started writing Insecure, she was like, I know it's going to be maximum of seasons because I like things with a beginning, middle, and end. And I'm exactly the same in terms of stretching story, but knowing when to stop. I think we're in a time where fans dictate stories sometimes, especially with like huge franchise things like, you know, Marvel film, or when books are adapted. I can't imagine what Harry Potter would have been like if it was a TV show. That would have been like as long as EastEnders, right? So I think the difference is how you plot out the story and how much story do you actually have. And I have lots of different ideas. And I would say about 90% of them, for me, I think they're TV and they're episodic, because I think there's so much to cover. And then with something that I'm working on, for example, that's a horror, it's very much a film where it's like, this is what I'm showcasing, and this is the beginning, middle, and end in 90 minutes.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, for the emerging screenwriter, there's always that discovery stage, isn't there, when you're trying to find out like what medium, what genre do you want to work in, like who you are as a writer. And I'm just curious to hear how you found yourself as a writer and how you found out what stories you want to tell.
I think it's trial and error. If I think about the time I was in New York for 3 months, I was obsessed with True Detective series 1, like obsessed with it. And I really love detective stories. I'm adapting like my very first novel that is a detective story, which you can talk about later. But I liked the grittiness of it. I liked that it was quite like Southern Gothic, but it was really glossy. It was like HBO. But then again, I love a lot of comedy dramas, and I like, you know, one of my favorite films is like Sister Act 2, for example. And I remember when it was time to share work in my group of like American students, I thought I was writing this like political thriller. And then when we would like read bits out, people would laugh. And I remember being like, what? And I think I was trying to do too many things. So I was like trying to do this very gritty thing, but then it had some comedic relief in it. And I think it takes some time to find your balance, and it to be okay to like lots of different genres. That you don't have to what's the word, like do pretend writing. Like you can actually just write what you want to watch and what you like. It doesn't have to be, I think with time, I always think with each script, like the tone shifts in terms of like what your intention and your execution. Trying to remember what your question was in terms of knowing like the type of things that I write.
Yeah, just like how did you find out like who you are as a writer, and like what stories you want to tell, which you've
so the main thing is writing what you know 100%. I think as screenwriters, of course, we have an imagination, we have endless amount of resources to research things through the internet, But I think it has to come from a place of honesty. It has to come from a place of integrity. And I think that is definitely, I hope it's paramount in my work, where whether it is, everything I write has a social issue at the heart of it, really and truly, even though I know it's entertainment, even though it's a thriller or it's a comedy drama or it's a drama or it's horror, there is something about humanity in it. And I think that's always been, even like my very, very, very first script that I found out recently that my agent is still like sending out as a sample. I remember I was like, oh my gosh, like I wrote that so long ago, my writing's matured, like I'm so different, like X, Y, and Z, I've got this and that. But actually that comes from like a place of vulnerability where I'm like, that's the first thing that like allowed people to see. And although, you know, some of the things that I wouldn't write that much exposition now, for example, but still at the heart of it, I would say that it's like a Yero script. And I can say that because I've spent time with my writing and the kind of things I like.
Yeah, I was gonna ask as well, so what are the common mistakes for an emerging screenwriter in scripts?
I would say doing that, the whole pretend writing thing. So writing what you think scripts are like, or what you think people want to read.
Yeah.
Especially in like action sort of scripts. So I used to work in development, and I would have like, I think about 1,000 scripts a year we would get submitted. And even from like established people, it would be it felt very scripted. And I don't know how to explain that without it being confusing, where it feels like the form and the structure is so, this is a script, don't forget anything else, this is a script, that I'm not really into the story. Maybe like the descriptions aren't really there, the scene hasn't been set for me. Maybe people are more focused on like the witty one-liners. Sometimes the characterization isn't there. I'm like, who is this person? And I've gone through a story, especially, you know, as a director, where I'm getting to direct more things that aren't things that I'm writing. In terms of scripts I'm attracted to, it's like I'm there in the story, I know what's happening, I can see it, it's like quite visceral, I know what something like smells like. And I think I do it a lot as well in some of the notes I get back from execs, where I have to make sure that I'm differentiating the characters so that it's not just me in like 5 different voices. Like I've actually given, you know, these people are like 3D, and I always, when I write, I cast people in my head, and not for like vanity to be like, they would love to do this. It just helps me make sure that these are real people. When I'm actually writing, I can like visualize people saying this, like going through this. I think sometimes with early drafts, newer writers forget that people aren't going to read it. Just read it, they're also going to watch it on screen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, off your point about characters, I know we discussed it in our article, didn't we? But like, I'd love to hear about your process behind crafting characters.
Sure. Every single thing that I write is like character driven, always. I think I'm just really interested in people, and I love, a lot of my characters are people that do sometimes like bad things within reason, like they have a reason why they're doing it and it's never malicious. But I think for me, I always do a character profiles before I even begin outlining or anything, just so that I know exactly where my character's going in this journey, what are their flaws, what do they want versus what do they need. This sounds super film school, but it helps me to make sure that things aren't just happening to the character. And there's something that I fear the most in my work is, you know, Orange is the New Black syndrome, where fantastic show, but, you know, the supporting cast, for me personally, was so much more interesting than Piper's character. And it was like, you know, we saw this world through her eyes. which I understand. I understand why those things are attractive to write, but the character, you know, needs to propel the story forward. Like they can't just have things happen to them, because that's not really how life is. We make decisions and they have consequences. So I make sure I go a bit in depth, actually. I've got this really cool list of like 50 questions.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it starts off with like name, height, and it goes all the way down to like their favorite book, their music, what's like the biggest secret that they have, what's like the worst lie that they've told. Just thought it helps with the story, and also it helps me when I'm stuck, in terms of remembering that this character is a person. I have to do a bit of make-believe, and like this is a real person. You know, I would love an actor to be really attracted to this character, and they feel multi-dimensional, and also just like looking at how characters are with other characters. How are they with this person? How are they with that person? How are they different from other people?
Yeah.
I think, you know, you and I both, we have so many projects that we're writing. I have to make sure that my characters aren't just the same character in different projects or different stories, and they have different livelihoods, and it feels like you're a fly on the wall in someone else's life.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. You mentioned a lot about like attracted to a script or attracted to a character.
Yeah.
Like, what is it about a script or story or character that draws you in or makes them stand out to you?
Sure. I think the most exciting thing for me being a screenwriter is, yes, the goal is to like have it on the screen and have people watch it and relate. But I think the first thing that I remember is like, I want someone to have fun reading this. I want someone to enjoy what they're reading. I want someone to turn the page and be like, what's going to happen next, and be with them. And I think, like, producers aside, actors aside, production designers aside, let's just like forget them. If I was giving my work to someone who had never watched TV in their life, maybe they didn't read books, and they're like, I hate TV, I still want them to enjoy the story and have like a visual medium of what I'm trying to portray. And I think was it Brian Cox recently that said, you know, writers is at the Succession premiere.
I love that.
Yeah, we'll talk about Succession. About how writers are like the unsung heroes or something. I don't want to like misquote him, sorry BFI, but but it's just saying, you know, like for me personally, like there's nothing without the story, like nothing exists without the story. Like the script is the blueprint. That's something that it just doesn't exist. There's nothing without this like structure of beginning and end. And I think to have something that feels very real is exciting. And when I say attractive, it makes me want to read more. It makes me want to fund something. If I was a commissioner, I'd be like, I want to see that on the screen. Other people want to see that on the screen. And also writing is just fun. I think it can be very laborious as well, with like revisions and doing lots of different versions of the same script 1,000 times. Michaela Cole did. She had like, what was it, 144 drafts?
Oh, something crazy.
So I think you have to really love the projects that you're doing to stick with it for that long.
Very true. Yeah, I'd love to talk a bit more about your shorts as well. And because I mean, obviously the people watching this as well hopefully be making shorts and aiming for that. I mean, that's their calling card, that's the stepping stone. And for you, like, what was the experience like for making your shorts? So talking about Signs, was that your last short film with the BFI?
Yeah. So Signs was a really fun and cool project to do, because that was my first like big commission, in terms of like, I have money to pay, like I think we had like 50 people on like our cast and crew or something ridiculous. So that was a luxury as well, because I had 18 months of script development, which doesn't often happen. And that started off as a pilot actually. And the lovely Matimba Kabalika, who was head of BFI Network at the time, read a pilot I had about these 3 young carers. And I had all these other ideas, and I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. She's like, no, that's a feature, that's a TV show, no, no, no. And then she read what was called Circles, and she was just like, wow, Mariam's character, we can just isolate her and make that a bit more contained, and let's see how that goes. By the way, you're directing it as well. And I'm like, okay. And I'd had experience directing, but in my mind, I was like, let me just get this written first. And that was really cool because, yes, it was a calling card for me. Like, it was really helpful to be able to have a tangible thing to be like, this is something about young carers. This is an issue that's really close to my heart. I'm going to showcase my writing. I have this incredible lead who's in the A24 and HBO film. But at the same time, after doing second unit directing on like a BBC and Amazon show, I would say making short is harder. It's harder because, and I feel like if you can make a short, then you can like do anything pretty much, because short filmmaking, you have to be so resourceful, even with money, even with having money from BFI. Like, I pulled in favors, like my sister was like stopping traffic when we were filming on the street, you know, roping friends into being extras and all of that. But what was really exciting, it was like the first project that I had, maybe it's quite a long short, it's about 19 pages. I remember BFI were like, cut. But I was very stubborn and said, I'm not cutting anymore. But it was the first project that I had lots of people come on board just from my words. And that was quite exciting because it's given me also like long-lasting relationships, like the cinematographer on Signs, Olan Kaladi, like literally is my brother in terms of like we're working on things together and with like bigger budgets and stuff like that. And I think that's really exciting. I think having a network of people that you can like work on this special project with is really helpful. And also short filmmaking, like screenwriting for short films, is a skill. It's like you have to convey a story in a short amount of time, and you don't have eight hours of a BBC and HBO show to tell the story. You've got most of the time between like 11 and 13 minutes, sometimes even 5 minutes. I just recently did 2 short films for the Booker Prize, and they are going to be shown at like the ceremony, and they are extracts from a book, from like shortlisted books, and I think they only come up to like maybe 1 minute and 15 seconds. Right. But it's like
how did you condense a story into a minute?
I know, right? So what was really exciting about that, and from like a screenwriting point of view was helpful, was I was given 6 extracts from each book to pick from, and I picked extracts that really resonated with me. One of the books was on grief, another one was on identity and race in Wales, in Cardiff specifically. And I thought, okay, I've only got one shot to do this. What extracts do I pick? Which part of the story is like the bit that I really want to showcase? And that was tough, but it was also really fun. And I think from coming from a short film background, that actually helped. I think if I'd not had the experience of making micro shorts, like did another short this year that was 5 minutes long and had like 5 cast members actually, and that was an interesting one. Again, it's like, how much can you convey in a short amount of time? And that's such a skill. It's a real skill. And the way in which we watch things as well in bite-sized kind of chunks, or binging. I know I binged Squid Game the first weekend it came out.
I think the whole world has binge watched.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a K-drama influencer, and I text all my friends. The first day it came out, I was like, have you watched Squid Game yet? Have you watched Squid Game? Like, what's this? And now they're all like Squid Game memes. I'm like, hello, I was the first. Anyway, but that is, sorry, tangent. But even Squid Game, that is a really cool lesson on screenwriting, because I forgot which episode it is that's only like 27 minutes, but like it's short for a reason. It's like telling a story in bite-sized chunks. I think streamers have like changed the game in how we tell stories with the TV, I worked at the BBC for a really long time, so I was used to everything being like a solid 60 minutes or like 59 minutes and like 3 seconds or something. So it's like you have to tell the story bang on that time because of like scheduling. But I think now with streamers, it's like, if you want to be bold, you can have a 15-minute episode, you can have a 73-minute episode if you want to order. But yes, sorry. Tangent.
No, that's great. No, but actually that's a really good point, actually, just to go off from that and about like film length, like short duration, because I know that there's quite a common mistake when people write big short films and they're trying to actually just condense like an entire feature or an entire episode into a short. And like for you, I mean, your short film began as a pilot episode and then and then you adapted it. So like how important do you think for like emerging screenwriters as well is it to know exactly how many pages that story really needs, if that's the question that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you want out of your short. So we had someone from Sundance. I was desperate to get into Sundance. I was like obsessed, my favorite festival. We had a programmer be like, this is great, but it should be 13 minutes. I remember being really annoyed by that comment. They're like, this is a really good film, but it should be this to fit into this. And that made me be like, well, I didn't make it just to get into a festival. It was even longer at one point. The first cut of Signs was something ridiculous, like 27 minutes.
I love that.
It's a very like slow film, and I think Mariam's character, if you haven't seen the film, is very insular, and Rianne Barretto, who is, I tell her she's like the Philip Seymour Hoffman of our time. She's like stayed in character, and she was very still, and I think, without spoilers, it needed that breath. And I think I wasn't precious about like the cuts that I made. I made them because I needed to make them, because the script was a bit baggy, that like extra bits of dialogue that we didn't really need. There were things that you could convey in a look. It doesn't have to be, you know, a whole bit of speech. But I think if it was any shorter, we tried to cut a couple of things and it just didn't quite work. So I'm actually happy that it was that length. And I think when you know. But if you want to get into all of the festivals, you are taking a risk by having a film over 15 minutes. And my film was 19. And there's like 2 minutes at the end in just like no dialogue, I think. Yeah. So I think it depends on what your interests are and the kind of film that you want to make. And I wanted to make that film, so I'm happy I stuck to my gun.
It is a great film. I did love it. And I forgot it was 19 minutes as well. I just felt like so engrossed in it all. But yeah, just going on a bit of a different subject, but like, what is the drafting process like? How do you create something that you love? You spent so much time on it, and then you get to a point where you have to start cutting and you have to start making like big decisions. And I want to know, like, what's your drafting process like, and have you got any tips and tricks for people?
Sure. I think for me, I'm at a stage in my career now where everything that I'm writing is I'm not really doing it on spec. And when I say on spec, it means I'm not doing it for free off my own accord to hopefully get a commission for something else. So every single script that I have in development, I'm being like paid to write. So I have to do all the revisions. I have to do all of the drafts. But before I even open any script software, I use Final Draft because it's the industry standard. I do my character profile. And then I do an outline / synopsis of whether it's a series outline or it's just an episode outline, just so I know the structure of it, what's going to happen at the beginning, what's the turning point, what's going to happen in the middle, how does this end, you know? If I'm pitching it, it's like, in series 2, this will happen. And just so I know what I'm doing, really, I selfishly do that so that I know what I'm doing. I think the biggest thing I thought when I first started writing was like, okay, I just have to have a blank page and just scene 1, scene 2, it's like, no. I put so much planning into writing. So outline / synopsis, and then I do a scene breakdown. So I know pretty much everything that's happening in each scene, why it's happening, how is it moving the story forward. And then after that, I will do like a first draft. I'll do a vomit script, and it's not going to be perfect. It will be, I think, probably like by the time I write like end of episode, I'm just like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever written. And I like read it the next day and it's like full of typos. But it's just on the page. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think writing can be very lonely and quite isolating. But it's also very collaborative. So then I have a team of people that are there to elevate the work. I don't have to just write a draft or something and then, I'm going to go and film this. It doesn't happen like that. So, right now, a project that I'm doing, I've taken a couple of months away from it because I was like, I need a break, but I'm going to start the whole process again. That went through so many revisions to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I know if the note keeps coming up, even if I disagree with it, I do think something isn't connecting in terms of my intention as a writer. For a reader reading it, they're not quite understanding what I'm trying to convey. And that's something that I'm learning through writing, that I might disagree with some of the feedback that I get, but it's a lot of the time it's there to help elevate the work. So I often do like 4 episodic TV. I think it's like 5 drafts-ish usually.
Right.
I think I'm going to have to do 5-ish drafts. I mean, probably 15 for a show that I'm doing at the moment with Sky, but that's usually the time frame. Which
5 drafts, yeah.
Yeah, it is. But then I'm like, I don't know. It's like, the first draft, second draft, third, and then you've got like a kind of like production draft, I guess, because you have, people looking at the set design and all of that and costume, and then you have the actual like shooting, like rehearsal draft, and then shooting script.
Right. Yeah. And it's when you're drafting, you get to a point where, I don't know, something's not working, or you can't work out what the problem is, and you do kind of get stuck, especially when you spent so long on it. So I wonder for you, like, if ever you've encountered those obstacles, how do you find your way back onto the path again? How do you find your way through the confusion and then identify, okay, this is the problem, or this is what I need to do?
I think that character profile really helps.
Yeah.
The one where it's like, what's their biggest secret? What's their biggest, what's the thing that's driving them away from their goal? Or there's one of the questions that's like, why do you love this character? And I'm like, oh, cheesy. But then it reminds me, I'm like, okay, no, if I've said that they persevere through things, like, okay, then is this what they're doing in the script? Are they not being active? I have a whiteboard as well that I use just to like do like mind maps. I think all of my writing, the bulk of my writing is me scribbling things down in notebooks, using like little cue cards and moving things around, and then I go back to it on the laptop. I think lots of my friends as well, they go on really long walks with their like dogs, the writer and dog life, which I know you have, like going on walks, just like doing like kind of like brain exercise games. My sister's like, you're such a loser, but I've like downloaded like loads of like garden escapes on my phone and like home escapes, and then I'll be playing something and I'll just think, oh my gosh, that's a really good idea, or wait, that's such a quick fix. Also, I talk lots to my like other writer friends as well, and weirdly talking to other people about their own projects kind of sparks something in mine. It could be completely different, but that's really helpful. And I think, I don't know if writer's block exists, I think there should be another word for it, where it's like a writer's smudge, because like you've got an idea for something, you know how to fix it, but it's like it's often, I find it's a lot of second guessing on my side as well, where I'm like, is this good, is this not good? But again, I have the luxury of being surrounded by people who, like, you know, it's their job to help problem solve. Like I think script editors and producers, when I meet a lot of people that want to get into scripted, they really like story, and then I start talking to them, they're like, wait, I think I actually would like to be a script editor, because I love telling stories, I love like making stories, I like outlining things, but actually I would like to be the one that like helps develop the story, not necessarily write it. And that is an interesting one. I think a lot of script editors and screenwriters like interchange, in terms of like, I started off as a script editor, I'm screenwriting. Lots of screenwriters go off to script edit and produce, or like produce their own work. You know, you've got people like Lucy Prebble on like Succession, and I think I'm seeing like quite a lot more of that. And in my own projects, I get to like hopefully exec produce as well, on things that I've written and created. So that's cool.
Amazing. That is amazing. And this sounds like the saddest question ever, but like, how do you make writer friends? Like, how do you find a network? I mean, especially because, as you said, it's a very solitary profession. And I know lots of people, there is a point where you're like, who can read this script, or who can I turn to who, is like interested in story as much as me?
Where did I make a lot of my writer friends? I'm trying to think. I mean, I did the Network, Edinburgh TV Festival Network years ago, and that was really helpful, because that was for people that were like completely new TV entrants and as excited about TV as me. And one thing I learned was the whole like networking sideways thing, where I have a lot of people that message me like on Twitter. They're like, how did you get an agent? You know, please can you help me get an agent? I'm like, okay, what have you written? I've never written anything before, but I really want to work, you know, have an agent at this agency. And I'm like, slow down, like, you know, what's your story first? And I think it's finding people that like the same stories as you. Also, you might not be able to find other writers straight away, but you'll find like friends that will read your work, friends that love TV. They are the first person to like point at the TV, be like, massive plot hole, or or they'll be like, have you watched this yet? Have you watched that? Oh, it gets better in episode 4, but like, you know, maybe wait for it to get better. And I think weirdly, they kind of become your accountability group, where it's like you can share your work with them. I think Twitter's a really great place to scour the internet for writers who are also looking for other friends. I think the pandemic has fostered a lot of like, you know, this would have been us sat in the watershed, like talking to each other over hot chocolate, but it's like, you know, so I think, and you have those kind of networking events like that. But I think if there's anywhere like in your local area, if like there are any sort of like film clubs as well, I think those are really cool. And yeah, don't be afraid to like use the internet and do like a call out. It's like, is there anyone that is also an aspiring screenwriter that wants to just like meet up once a month? And we don't even have to read each other's work. We can like sit in silence and type at our laptop. I think it's just nice having other people around you. I think my friend who's in America, sometimes we're like on Zoom and we just type, like we're working on our own scripts and we have like music and just like, you know, tea time. Because it can be super lonely, it really can be. And I think you know, it's not the same as directing, where you're going onto set, everyone's waiting for you to like make that call on something. So it can feel lonely, although it really is a collaborative process.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just wanted to ask, I mean, it's such an exciting time right now, isn't it, for like film, television, short films? I mean, even this BFI scheme and everything, it's incredible. There's so many opportunities, but also because there's a lot of stories out there, and there's a lot of series, and there's like, you can come up with an amazing idea, or you can write an amazing script, and then you realize, oh my God, like Netflix has just come out with something similar. Or like you approach a production company and they're like, we got something similar on our slate. And I wonder, how do you make your story distinct, and how do you prove that you're the writer to tell that story if there's a similar thing out there?
Sure. I would say the whole like writing what you know is really important. And I think when I say writing what you know, it's also knowing your voice, and knowing like these are the kind of things that you want to write, and this is like why it's really important to you. I said earlier that like I cringed at some of like my earlier stuff, but at the heart of it, like the intention is there. And I think you're always going to have people developing the same thing. Like how many shows where it's like Killing Eve, but it's not Killing Eve. And I think, you know, I had a conversation with my agent yesterday. So I'm doing a tennis show, but it has like the slant on it is like crime, because that tends to be literally everything I do. I'm like, it's a thriller. And my agent was like, oh, something, I got sent something recently and it's also about tennis, and just so that it's in your peripheral vision that there's something else that's tennisy around. But for me, I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to worry about that, because my story is different. My story is different, maybe because it has Black leads and it's, you know, it's their lived experiences, like young Black athletes and the pressure of that, of representation, and like when you just want to be like, you know, a tennis player. It's different because it looks at like family dynamics, their siblings. It's different because I've written it. I think that comes from a place of confidence, and like with time. I don't think a couple of years ago I would have been freaking out like, oh my gosh, quick, we need to like get it out to everyone now. Actually, no, it's not ready to be sent out to everyone just yet. Like, let me take my time. Let me make sure the story is like perfect, or as perfect as it can be. I've always think there's like no such thing as like a finished draft. But yeah, I think it's when you're confident in like your own honesty and your own integrity, as I said earlier, as a writer, then everything else is just noise. I feel like there are so many similar things. You know, how many detective shows are there? How many kind of like sitcoms are there that are very similar in themes? And I think we're getting there in terms of like different platforms as well. So I think you just have to believe in your work.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. And just picking up on what you said earlier about you sending it out when it's ready, sending out your script when, like how do you know when it's ready?
How do you know when it's ready? I think when you've had some trusted eyes on it. I think when you've gone through a couple of drafts where you've asked your friends, like, does this make sense? If you're getting the same note again from people who aren't in TV, they aren't in film, they're just like, why are they doing this? Why, you know? And I think if you can't answer that, if you can't answer the intention you have for something, then you're like, oh, maybe I have to revisit that. I think there is a time, although I say that you can never finish a script, there is a time where you're like, I can't do anything else more to this, because you start resenting the project that you're actually doing. But I feel like when you think the characterization is right, when you think the story moves forward, where you think you've conveyed every bit of emotion, whether it's drama or comedy, whether it's a family tragedy, whether it's, you know, a sci-fi kind of dystopian thing where you're like, I feel really proud of this and I would watch this. I feel like this has the mechanics of a story for TV. And I think once you understand that, once you understand like how to tell a story, which sounds really patronizing, but even with me, I'm so bad on structure. I'm being paid money to write things and I'm really bad on structure, and I know all the stuff I need to do, but I keep needing to be reminded. And I think when you know the ins and outs of that, or when you can adhere to like actual beats of like act one, act two, all of that, then I think once you've done that, and then the story is good, the characters are fantastic, and you get to the end of that script and you're like, okay, wow, even though I've written that, I would want to watch the next thing, or I would want to talk to my friend about that over coffee because I've just seen this film. So I think that's when you know you're ready to send it to people. It can be really scary to send your work out, really scary. I think a lot of screenwriting, part of it is vulnerability, where I sometimes get notes back from execs that my agent has sent work to, just as like a sample. Someone gave some notes back recently and I was like, that's weird. I didn't ask for these. But I was just like, oh, okay, that's her opinion, that's fine. But I think it's a rewarding but a strange thing to have people like critique something from your mind. And I think we all do it when we watch things, when we read things. And I think I don't like the term thick skin, where you have to have a thick skin. I think you have to be aware that it's very competitive, and it can sometimes mean 144 drafts like Michaela did. But it is rewarding. I think it is a fun and rewarding career. And sometimes people don't even want to make screenwriting their career. They just like writing things. They've got 20 scripts in their cupboard and they don't, and that's fine for them.
Yeah.
So that's also that too.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I think we've got like a few questions.
Right.
So someone's asked, Yero, could you please discuss your writing routine?
My writing routine.
Yeah.
I want to lie and be like, so I wake up at 5 a.m.
We'd all
like,
know that's a lie.
routine, what's that?
No one does.
Okay. I have a calendar that is like, this day I have to focus on this project, this day I have to focus on that project, because I do find it, as I said earlier, that it's a bit tricky to, I'm writing a forensic drama at the moment that isn't my show. I'm a staff writer, that's a writer for hire on someone else's show. So this part of my brain is focusing on that. This other part of my brain is focusing on the show that I am doing with BBC about like my time at fashion school. This side of my brain is the YA novel adaptation. This side is the tennis show. This bit is a thriller about a cult. So it's like, it's finding ways to compartmentalize and make sure that I have goals that are realistic. So as I said, my different processes is, outline, scene breakdown, script. Maybe I'll be at different stages of that. So I think, I don't know how to say it without making it sound like I don't sleep, because I do sleep. I just do not have a personal life. I would say, making sure I know exactly what I'm trying to tell in the story first, more than anything, and then the rest kind of flows. I don't know if that is a really good answer. I'm so sorry.
That was great though. But yeah, writing routines, like I guess it must change for the project or day to day.
It changes day to day. Like sometimes I'm on set, like I was in Cardiff recently and I was just like, okay, from where I live to Cardiff, it's like, I think the journey is like 5.5 hours with like three changes. So I'm gonna write on the train. Because when I get to my hotel, I'll be like too tired. And I think, honestly, with deadlines, I'm just forced to write. Sometimes I'm writing at like 3 a.m. because I'm too exhausted during the day, or I'm writing for 2 hours a day, or I'm writing for like half an hour, and then I'm just filling my notebook with like possible ideas for an episode. I think routines are great, but sometimes your brain just doesn't work like that, and you're just like, rest. And I actually, ideas come to me like in the shower when I'm like going to get some shopping, or when I'm, talking to a friend on the phone about something funny. I'm like, okay, wait. And I think it's hard to try and cram everything into to a certain time. When I was working
Sure.
full-time, I'd wake up really, really early and be like, working full-time, not as a freelance writer. Okay, I've got 2 hours to like write all of these scenes. And I found that really difficult because, again, what's the word that I want to use that's not writer's block? My brain just couldn't do it. I'm like, I don't have anything to say, so I'm just not going to do anything. So I think we need to be gentle on ourselves with routines, especially in the pandemic.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's another question. Did you write when not working in the industry? I currently have a 9-to-5 job and have a hard time setting out the time.
Yeah. So what I did is I said to myself, if I can't do that waking up really early thing, because the job that I had was like I had to take a lot of work home. Then I was like, let me do 3 days a week for like 2 hours in the morning or the evening, and then maybe like one Saturday or Sunday in the month. I think you have to be gentle with yourself, because you don't want it to become a strain where you're like, oh, I have to write now, or I have to miss out on this thing because I'm forcing myself to do this thing I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
So I think realistic goals for yourself with the resources you have. And I always say to people as well, if I could turn back time, I probably would have worked in a cafe or in a job where I didn't have to use my brain as much as I did, because I think working in development and then writing on the side was quite taxing on my brain.
I can imagine. Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah, realistic goals, and just like in a month you end up writing, even if you say by the end of the year I want to have a pilot script, by mid 2022 I want to have a pilot script. I think you can do like bite-sized chunks of like revisions and stuff like that all the way until however long, just so it feels less daunting and you have less pressure on yourself.
Absolutely. And I think lots of people, like, especially when they're entering the industry as well, I don't think people quite appreciate how long these processes take. Like, even when you are getting paid for it, it's still going to take a ridiculous amount of time to like develop that idea, write that script. I mean, for you with Signs, you said you had 18 months, which I know was a luxury.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was only, I think I had that long because it was like a change of like head of department. It was because usually it's like, okay, so here it is, go and do that. And it was like quite like a psychological script, so I had to like make sure I was, we had lots of help as well from like charities, like young carers charities, and how we were portraying, the authenticity of the character, etc. So even waiting for those notes, we were like waiting for notes for the like 11th hour before we were shooting. So it's like, but I think take as long as you need for things.
Exactly.
There's a rush as well where I've done it in the past. I think my Ones to Watch Edinburgh TV Festival, I was on Ones to Watch last year, which was a fantastic experience. And it's like, once you're on Ones to Watch, you're on it for life, because it's like you get a mentor, you mentor other people, it's great. But I was very tongue-in-cheek, and I think my bio said that I wanted like an HBO show by the time I was 30. Because one of the questions was like, what is like the biggest thing that you want? And I said that. And I think we put a lot of like pressure on ourselves to be like, I need to do this at that age. And there are all of these lists where it's like, top screenwriters under this, or like all of that. And those are really alluring, and it's like, ooh, like glittery glam. But actually, like, just take your time with what you need to do, hone your craft, like make sure you're telling the stories that you want to tell and that you want to see on screen, because the industry, there are so many people that are like looking for scripts and they're looking for stories, but just make sure that yours is the one that is the best, because it comes from your heart and it isn't just, I would say if you want to be in screenwriting for money, it's like the wrong career. It is a lucrative career, it can be, but I think it's rewarding when you're telling the stories that you really want to tell.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And I was going to ask you, I mean, like, what advice would you give to people that are entering the industry with like little to no experience? Because I mean, it's
Yeah,
such like a daunting thing, isn't it? And like you just don't know where to start. So
I
what
think I
I
wrote
know that's a
something down.
broad question.
Um, I wrote something down so that I could make sure that I didn't ramble. Oh, okay, here it is. So I think I said earlier, in terms of like people really out of everything in scripted, the first thing people think of is like screenwriting. It's like, that's the one to do. I want to do that. And I think that's really great. But I think if when you're only just getting into starting to think about working in this industry, I would say write a list of all of the cool jobs that you like the sound of. I think it's Screen Skills that does a really cool glossary of every single thing, from like casting assistant to like production designer to the difference between a set designer and production designer, the difference between a commissioner and a development exec. It's an extensive list, and definitely use that. And think of what kind of stories you want to tell, and why you want to tell them. And it, you know, if you're in it for the long haul, because it is as I've said, it's rewarding, but it can be quite isolating. I would say utilize free courses. There are some really cool courses. What is it? Future Learn, that does the introduction to screenwriting course. That's free, and you can do it over 3 months, and it's like, do it in your own time, which I think is really cool. I would say make use of, like, I just love free things, and I feel like film and TV, the accessibility is there, but it's just knowing where to find the things that is tricky. So it's not really that accessible, actually. I would say make use of BBC Writers Room's script room, really useful. If you're not writing, you should be reading. If you don't feel that you're ready to start writing your award-winning screenplay, no pressure, just like read as much as you can and watch as much as you can.
Yeah, do you recommend any books? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I mean reading scripts.
Yeah, right.
Because so I get asked about lots of screenwriting books, and I think, and lots of screenwriting authors are like, I'm not saying anything different to anyone else. I've got a book deal where I'm saying this, and it's quite funny. So I think Sid Field has some good books, but really I think reading, well, when you read, if you can find your favorite episode of TV or your favorite film and then put the name of it and then PDF in Google, most of the time the script comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I learned more about like dissecting the script of Notes on a Scandal than I probably did in like my 3 months of screenwriting, which is interesting, because it was like, oh, this is why I like it. Okay, so it was in this moment on page whatever, 10 minutes in, where you're like, oh no, they're pulling the rug, now something's changed. And then it kind of helped me in my process of learning how to tell a story. But I mean, if you Google top screenwriting books, and if you want to buy them, if you like reading screenwriting books, please do. Those people like Into the Woods by John York.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't read screenwriting books either. It's scripts all the way. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think we've run out of time, Yero.
Oh.
It's been great though. Thank you so much for all of just, your really like candid answers and just giving all this advice and inspiration. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It's always nice talking to you.
Yeah, it is. So I don't know, what is the next step?
Oh, and also if anyone has any if there are any questions, I'm on Twitter, so if you tweet me, I'll see if I can answer them. Sorry, not answer something.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Yero and Zia. I think it's been such a fascinating conversation. I've taken away loads from it, and I'm going to watch back and make sure I haven't missed anything. But I think one of the things that I really took away from is how to make sure your writing isn't a lonely process, and finding collaborators and sort of making it a much more social process. I thought that was wonderful to hear from, and also just hearing about your process and actually how you go from like, oh, this character could be interesting, to a script and what your steps are on getting to that, I think is a really useful thing for people to kind of get a sense of like how this massive 18-month writing time actually gets spent. But yeah, once again, thank you both so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and remember to stay up to date with everything else that we've got coming up by heading over to the BFI Film Academy Southwest social media or our website, which we'll put in the chat again. But for this evening, just, yeah, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evenings.